Hello and welcome to Bergkamp Wonderland. We are an Arsenal podcast. Yes, we are. And before I introduce my guests, personal message to Richard, 65 of Coventry, Virgin. Richard, we will celebrate how the fuck we want, when the fuck we want. And there's nothing you and your little micro penis can do about it. My name is Chris. I'm your host for this evening, and I'm joined by the fabulous Mr. John Welsh, top left. John, how you doing?
I'm good, mate. 5 out of 5. Can't complain. Making people upset that we're celebrating, and I probably forgot to do the little intro video, so Danny's going to kill me later. But there you go.
It did catch me off guard. I'm not going to lie. I was like, "Oh, hang on, I'm waiting for the," and then I just saw live. I was like, "Oh Christ!" Ever the pro. Anyway, speaking of professionals, here he is. It's the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Ellis Mill. Ellis, how you doing, sir?
I'm good, mate. I'm buzzing. 5 from 5 and podding again. Second time in not too long. Good
and
times.
I think I need to ask you that question that everybody's going to ask. When are you going to let the hair down? Because, you know, there's a lot of hair behind here, isn't there? For anyone that doesn't know, there's a man bun going on there. You are the new Wout Weiss, who's just signed for Leicester. If you haven't seen him, he's got very David Luiz hair. So, and by the way, while on the subject of Sky Sports, it's Rams, not Reams. Okay, guys, do your fucking research. Anyway, let's move on. Nice to have you back, Ellis. Nice to have you back. Hope you are well. And yes, John and I have been talking about our social lives. We've been social for the past week. It seems very strange. I'm not sure I like it. Speak to more than one person in a week, and I'm like, no, I'm good. So we shall speak about Arsenal instead. We are going to talk about 2 games in one this evening because we don't really want to do like match reports. Everybody does those, so we're just going to combine the 2. So from the off, then, John, you made reference to it. 5 out of 5. We beat Fulham at the weekend in a game that I was next to the Welsh wonder himself, Mr. Jason Davies, for that. We left it late, but we got the winner. And very similar, as you said off air, very similar performance in the win we got last night, where we put it up, Mr. Martinez, who we may touch on a bit later on. But yeah, two very good performances, but one in the Arsenal way. I think you probably know what I mean when I say that, in that we don't make anything easy, but we can only beat what's in front of us, and another 2 very good performances.
Yeah, I think, this season, everyone's spoken about the World Cup and where it sort of comes, and that a lot of squads are going to have sort of half of the team will be going off to a World Cup, and there's going to be a load of players left behind, and it's going to be very weird. And how do you keep everyone's fitness up, and what a player's going to be like when they come back? So I think in the early part of the season, I was looking more for just get results and get points on the board than performances. But to be fair to the team and Mikel and all the coaches and everything, I think some of the score lines from games have either flattered the opposition or, not really done us justice on the performances we put in. The Fulham game, we were in total control. Majority of the game, obviously they got the second half. Same in the Villa match, same sort of thing happened. We were really all over them. And Villa, really, I think if you just look at the first half, that's probably one of our best performances. We were just totally dominating. And it was more than anything, it was down to a bit of really good defending from Villa, or a nice save from Martinez, or some poor finishing on our part. Otherwise, realistically, we could have had a lot more goals in that game. And same with Fulham. But the thing that's impressed me the most is every time we've conceded this season, I think the longest time we've had from conceding to us getting a goal in response has been 10 minutes. And every other goal has been even less time than that. That's worlds apart from last season. The amount of times we concede a goal and the heads would drop and everything, everyone's buoying each other up. Most of the goals have come from an individual error rather than collective for the most part, which is fine because that happens in football. Everyone makes individual errors, but there doesn't seem to be any structural or the defense of a unit problems like we've seen for the past probably 4 or 5 years really with Arsenal. The forward line's all singing. Everyone's chipping in with goals. We've lost 2 key players in Partey and Zinchenko, and it doesn't seem to have really knocked us. It's not going to go on forever. Obviously, at some point, we are going to lose a game. I'd love to think we're going to win every single game this season. That'd be amazing, but it's not going to happen. But whilst you're there, just keep it going, keep the momentum. And the players that come in all seem to know what their roles are, all doing the job. The team's adapting slightly depending on who is playing. And the fact that we're pissing people off, it is like, that's the big thing for me. I'm absolutely loving it. So there's some people who just don't like Arsenal. Fine, fair enough. There's clubs we don't like. There's going to be people who don't like Arsenal. But there's those people who not only do they not like Arsenal, like they really don't like Mikel Arteta because of the way he talks or acts on the sideline, but they don't like an individual player, and that just translates then to the rest of the club. And the fact they're getting so wound up about it. And they're all going, oh, it's only Fulham or it's only Palace and all these sorts of things. Right. Well, to be fair, the one team that we've, like Leicester and Villa, obviously not doing great so far this season, but I think everyone would agree their squads are better than their results are necessarily given. But Fulham are in the top half. They got a result against Liverpool. They were unbeaten before they played us. Villa, they've been very poor. And there's obviously something wrong there with Gerrard. But the players they've got really, really good players. And they've got some players that we're even looking at, apparently. I'm sure we'll come on to that later. So it's just all good news. And the speed with which people like Gabriel, Zinchenko, those two in particular, how they've adapted into the squad and seem to have energized everyone as well and how much they've bought into it. I just think it's really, really impressive that Mikel was not only everyone knew they're quality players, but he knew that they would fit and work with the team and keep that momentum and that group mentality that they've got going. And the fans have been incredible. I mean, I'm sure you can talk about, Chris, what the atmosphere is like at the stadium, but this season watching the games has been unreal. The noise that's coming out of the crowds, like whether it's home or away, is just unbelievable. I've not heard anything like that for not really since like pre-Invincibles era in terms of sort of stadium noise. And even then, I don't remember it being that loud. I don't know if it's just modern mics or something like that, but it's crazy at the moment. It's so good.
The last time I remember the atmosphere particularly being there, and I will touch on the atmosphere in a second once we've spoke to Ellis, but the goal, the winning goal on Saturday, the last time I remember the atmosphere is, do you remember the Reiss goal against Middlesbrough that Sky kind of missed because it happened straight from kickoff, and God rest his soul, by the way. But that's the last time I remember, and that was what, 2008. I mean, it's just amazing. And that was at Highbury as well, where an atmosphere was very easy to generate. And, because it has that type of stadium. This stadium it can be very hollow when it's quiet, but it very much is not that at the moment, which we'll come on to. But Alice, what do you make of it? Because the biggest thing that I take from this season so far, like John said, spoiler alert, by the way, we are probably going to lose a game this season. Sorry, guys, it's just going to happen. But the team for me it's very likable, and it's very, you can see it's been coached. You can see that Mikel has worked very hard over this summer to get a really bonded group, a group that wants to fight for each other, and a group that believes in itself. And like John said, let the haters hate. If people want to moan about us celebrating, or they want to moan about us being good, I'm fine with that. I'm absolutely fine with that. We've had so many years of being, let's be honest, shite. It's quite nice to have a likable side. What's your sort of views on in particular those last two performances where we thoroughly deserve the wins and look like a side that deserves to be where we are, top of the table?
Yeah. I'll just echo pretty much 100% of what John said. Like the atmosphere, all the points he's made about how the team's playing, regards to the teams who are taking points off. There's naysayers that say, "Oh, it's only so and so. It's only Fulham. It's only Crystal Palace. It's only that." But at the time, we played 3 of the same teams that Liverpool played. They dropped points against Palace. They dropped points against Fulham. They nearly dropped points again against Newcastle last night. Obviously, we haven't played Newcastle, but we played Bournemouth. Obviously, they smashed him. We probably could have beaten them by more. Let's be honest. Like, Gabriel Jesus was a toenail away from scoring another goal in that game as well. And I just think it's stark contrast, isn't it, towards from last season when we were 3 games, 3 losses. We've now got 5 wins from 5, and regardless of who it is against, well, regardless if it was 5 games against Bournemouth or not, it's still 15 points on the board that we didn't have this time last year, and it's 15 points that we've got as a cushion. And like you say, we're going to lose. Obviously, the big test for this team will be when we do lose, and how much that impacts our season, and how quick it is for us to turn around that loss and move on. We've obviously got some tricky fixtures coming up. I think. Am I wrong in saying we've got Liverpool and Tottenham very close together later in the year?
Yeah,
we've got
October,
2
isn't it?
teams. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got 2 of the quote unquote big teams like back to back, I think, in October or November, whatever. But the main thing is, I think, regardless of the results, regardless of the points on the board, for me, the most encouraging thing to see is, like you say, is the team are coached and the way they play and the way our game is playing. And compared to last season where we would barely create a chance, or the chance we were creating were just not quality. Whereas now, I'm not really much for stat man, but being in a WhatsApp chat with a guy called Travis who bombards me with XG pretty much every game. He'll send me a tweet of the XG for that game or the XG for this game. And last night's game, we had the same XG, or better XG actually, than Man City, who won 6-0 and we won 3-0. In the first half against Villa, we had 15 shots or some way double figures. It might not be 15, I might be exaggerating, but with double figures compared to their 2. Like, we are dominating games, and like John rightly said, we've been a bit unlucky. Partly down to our poor finishing, partly down to keepers or defenders just throwing their body on the line. Villa obviously were desperate for the point, so they're going to be up for Arsenal, aren't they? So I think that was to be expected. And as for Fulham, like you said, they're a really difficult team to beat and have been difficult for other teams until we beat them. They were undefeated. So I think you are going to have games like that. But I really think we are due at a 5-0, a 6-0, just because we are creating those chances that we weren't creating. And we're doing it. Let's be honest, we're 5 games into the season. We've lost our first choice centre mid and probably our first choice left back. Those first 2 games, Zinchenko showed how much of an influence he was having on that sort of left pocket of the team. And we're still winning games, and we're still dominating halves, dominating games where we think we could be 3-4-0 up and the scoreline flat as the opposition. That's the most encouraging thing for me. The points are great, don't get me wrong. To be in the position we are, 5 wins from 5, coming from like breaking that duck against Fulham. I can't remember how many games it had been, but under Mikel Arteta, when we go behind in the second half, I don't think we've won a game. I'm not sure how many games that stretch had been, but we hadn't won a game, and we've broken that duck. And the only way to get over that is by doing it. And I'm hoping, obviously, there'll be more things that will overcome this season that will just show that what Mikel Arteta, what Arsenal are building here is a quality team. Like I said, they're all really likeable guys. And again, to touch back on the fans, the fact that most of our goals have been individual errors, but unlike seasons of old, the fans aren't jumping on those players. They are gearing them up. And I think that is showing with the fact that when we do go behind, we then, like John said, 10 minutes or less, we're equalising, or we're then going ahead. And that just shows, again, it's the 12th man. Again, that might be a bit of a, what's the word? I've gone blank now. Cliche. There you go. Thank you. Might be a bit of a cliche, but I genuinely think it is. And again, like you said, it comes, the fact that it's coming from the TV, that never used to be the case. And everyone goes on about nights at Anfield, but I flicked over and watched the end of or parts of the Newcastle game when it was half time or after our game, and it didn't. Obviously, it went mad when they scored in the 98th minute of 6 minutes at a time. But before that, it wasn't exactly booming. Whereas at the Emirates, again, it's not something we're used to, and it's quite weird to say. But the fans, whether they're away, the away fans, I think, have been good for a number of years. But the home fans, in particular, with is it the Ashburton Army, I think they've done a great thing there of getting a young crowd in there who are up for it. Songs like the Saliba song, and there's just a really good feel-good atmosphere. And I'm just hoping that, obviously, like you say, there is going to be that slip up, that atmosphere doesn't drop. I don't think it will, judging from the mistakes we've made and the way they've got behind players. I don't think it will. I think they will get them up for it. And I feel something's coming. I'm not saying we're going to win the league, but I just feel like we're going to do something. And the position we put ourselves in, I am so confident of top 4. Obviously, someone can probably come back at me when we don't finish top 4 and say, "Oh, Ellis, you said you're really confident." But I am. Like, look at the rest of the teams. Other than Man City, people are dropping points left, right, and centre. No one really looks consistently good. No one really looks like they're putting a good run together. They all look like they're either not the finished article, they're building, or they're just on a bit of disarray, or they're just Tottenham and they're really fucking lucky and they get lots of decisions. Whereas we look like we're still not the finished article, but we look very close to it.
God, Tottenham are so boring as well, aren't they? They're so
They
Conte.
really are.
Oh my God, it's like a couple of breakaways a game, and the rest of the game is just Eric Dyer passing it sideways to whoever that other fraud centre back is they've got. I just to touch on the atmosphere. I think both of you touched on it, and obviously I have had the experience of going this season last week. Leaving here at 5 a.m. was not fun, I've got to be honest, but it was worth it. And genuinely, there is a feel-good factor there, and it's not just in the stadium. It's the concourse, it's the club shop, it's the streets before, it's the tube. There's a sort of a genuine buzz about it, and there's sort of after the game, obviously spirits are high when we beat Fulham, and people were, sort of slapping each other on the back, etc. But people were making conversation with complete strangers. You don't really get that unless you've got a proper football family, to use a bit of another cliche there. But you've got a real togetherness in the fan base there, and I think normally where we have had a situation and a certain group that have caused division amongst the supporters for a long time, they're nowhere to be seen right now because there is no negativity to thrive on. And don't get me wrong, you have to go on Twitter and put in the AFC hashtag. There will be somebody who'll have a moan. There'll be somebody who will still find a fault in something, and there'll be some people who want to double down on their own misgivings of the team last year. And as I've said on a number of times on this podcast, I wasn't a believer for a long time last season. I didn't see where we were going. I thought we were really directionless. But newsflash, you can change that opinion and you can channel that negativity into a positivity. And at no point in that Fulham game did we ever turn on the players. At no point. There was one moment where Odegaard sort of checked from shooting and passed it, and a few people went, "Oh!" But it wasn't like it wasn't an aggression. It was "You're better than that, shoot," and you really got that impression. And when the substitutes come off the bench, look at the impact Eddie Nketiah has had in both these two games. Sure, I'm sure he is absolutely desperate to play, but he's happy just coming off the bench right now. He's happy being a part of it. Tomiyasu coming off the bench, the same. We saw Smith Rowe last night. There's this sort of thing going around at the moment that Saka's maybe not quite at the level that we thought he was. And somebody made a really good point on, I think it's Football Weekly I listened to earlier on. They were saying, actually, he isn't playing badly. He's playing very well. The difference is he isn't the only player we're relying on this season. Last season, everything went through him and we noticed him all the time. We've got different options now. And because of that, we're noticing that maybe he's not part of the game as much as he was last season. We weren't so dependent on him, and that can only be a good thing. I think if you asked him yourself, are you in top form? I think he probably would say, I've got another level to go to. But when you've got sort of players like Martinelli, I mean, I haven't got a fan club of his, but I'm creating one. I just love him. Everything about him, and that finish last night. A lot of people have said it's a Martinez error. You could argue because he gets a hand on it, he probably should do better. But that technique, I think Arteta said about it in the post-match game, to get your knee over the ball and to put that into the ground and then back into the net. I mean, how many times have we seen high-end strikers miss from that distance? I thought it's a really clinical finish. And at no point in either game last night or Fulham did I ever think that we weren't going to win the games. Even when it got late with Fulham, there was just this will to suck the ball into the net. And the celebrations when Gabriel sort of the what's the word when someone turns it around? I can't think of the word, but Gabriel turned his whole game on his head because I think he did make a bit of a howler, although he wasn't helped with the pass to him in fairness. But he really did come out shining brightly after that game. Next couple of fixtures, by the way, before we go on to another topic, got Manchester United away on Sunday. Wouldn't it be lovely to extend the run up there? We then go into Europe away to Zurich, which is on the 8th. And then we're home to Everton, home to PSV in Europe, away at Brentford, home to some tin pot club up the road who play in a toilet bowl, home to Bodo Glimt, home to Liverpool, and then away to Bodo Glimt, taking us into October. So, yeah, those two fixtures, sort of league fixtures back to back against Spurs and Liverpool, probably are the real tough tasks. But both at home, So if we can get a result at Old Trafford, I don't see any reason why we can't go there and win, to be honest. I really don't. they're still bedding in. We'll see what performance they turn out tonight. They're about to kick off against Leicester, but they are the next few fixtures. John, let's go back to you then. Just looking back again over those two performances, just picking out a couple of players. Martin Odegaard is one I do want to ask you about, because I haven't seen a player in the flesh since Santi Cazorla who makes the game look that effortless in midfield. His ability, he's one of those players that when you see him on TV, he looks great, he looks silky, but when you see him live, he's just that little, he's always got his head up. He looks, before a pass even comes to him, 2 or 3 seconds before he receives the ball, he already knows where it's going next. His quick feet, his ability to drive into spaces, and also knowing when to go and when to drop in. He is fast becoming a guy who I feel like we could Cesc Fabregas ourselves around. Do you know what I mean? Like build around that midfield.
Yeah.
Has he impressed you as much as I've just spouted off about him there?
Yeah, I mean, in particular this season, towards the end of last season, I was a little bit worried about him because in a couple of games I felt he went not missing so much as he got a little bit muscled out of games physically. Again, not all his fault, partly down to the midfield, and I think there was a general amount of fatigue within the team because our squad was so small and we just had no rotation options at all, so you couldn't really rest anyone, and I think he was just feeling that, and probably the rest of the midfield were. But this season he seems to have gone up another level. The speed of thought and the ingenuity with which he plays the ball is ridiculous. And I think when we first signed him, I was excited. I was like, well, everyone knows about this kid because obviously he went to Madrid when he was 16. He's played all over Europe and he was great at Sociedad. And obviously we had the loan, it was really impressive with him. But there was still, for me at least, a question mark of, he clearly a very good player. I thought it was a good price, but I thought we're probably not going to see him really hitting strides until maybe 2-3 years down the line. He might start to, come into his own sort of thing. But this season he's just started flying. He's got the goals as well. There was some fortune in them, but he seems to have obviously getting that confidence. And I think he even said in one interview that sometimes he needs to be, paraphrasing slightly, but he needs to be a bit more selfish sometimes and take the shot on himself rather than just looking for the pass. But yeah, he's just got incredible vision. And I think the thing with him is as well, we've put a player in front of him, and this is no disrespect to Lacazette, but we've upgraded on Lacazette and put Jesus in front of him, which immediately makes the game easier for him because he's got this constant absolute terror of a striker up front, just annihilating defenses and always moving, so that he's always got an option. Last season, it was a lot of the time of, well, I'm going to play with Saka and maybe Martinelli if he's coming in off the side, and that's kind of it. Now he's got 3 options in front of him at all times, coming in at all different angles. It makes the game so much easier. You've added the way that Xhaka's playing this season into that. He's got someone else to find in the box. The way the fullbacks now come inside, but then obviously if we're playing Tierney, then he's got someone on the overlap. He's just got a lot more pitch to play with than I think he did have last season. And he's just, I think if he ends up staying at the club for even 5 years, and we sold him on for, whether it was the same amount or more money, the money we paid for him is so low for that quality of player, for that intelligence, and also just for the way he, off the ball, the way he works and drives the team forward. He initiates that press. He's directing people where to go. To be a captain at that age, but actually have the respect of the other players, I think is a huge thing. That's a really difficult thing to do when you've got some older guys in that squad, like Xhaka and Partey, people like that, who've been around the block a bit, very experienced internationals, played at the highest level of football and everything. But he will say things and they'll listen and they'll pay attention. And to be, 22, to have that kind of respect from other professionals, I think is huge. And also he's finally got, I think, the one thing he's probably never had at any point in his career, that he's got a stable club, a stable manager who really believes in him, backs him. It's quite clear that Arteta really wants to build the team around him as well. players will come and go from clubs and leave and stuff. But like you said about Fabregas, this is a guy who they made captain, not just for all those attributes and reasons, but because I think they want to keep him there for as long as possible. I mean, I'm sure the club would love it if Odegaard played the rest of his career at Arsenal and you could just constantly be refreshing the team and just going, okay, we've sold this player, we've made a profit on him. This youth development one hasn't quite worked out. This one's gone, but we brought these guys in. Martin, now do it for these guys. They're going to get the goal. You just will give you the ball and you just direct it. It's like an orchestrator, which call it a conductor on the pitch in the way he plays. I haven't seen him live yet, which is really annoying. I'm trying to get down for a game this season. But obviously, now we're doing so well, it's very hard to get tickets. Yeah. I've spoken to a lot of silver members, and they're like, even us getting tickets is a nightmare right now. So, but yeah, so I'm trying to get down for a game because there's some players in certain eras who you just want to see play live because it's such a different experience from on the TV. Because he's the sort of guy who I remember first time I saw Arsenal with Bergkamp, and I think I spent probably 90% of the match just watching Bergkamp, whether we had the ball or not. Because it's just like, this is amazing. I've never seen a footballer like it, like in the flesh. And you had the same thing with Henry, and then when we signed Ozil, when he was playing well, it was the same thing. He was just like magic to watch. So yeah, he's a guy I really, really want to see live, and I'm so pleased we got him. And there was a few fans who were genuinely negative about signing him, going, "Oh, it's a waste of money. He's not going to make it. He's a Madrid flop and everything else." I just think the atmosphere around the club has changed so much now that when we sign a player, even if it's someone people aren't that sure about, fans seem to be a lot more now because of the way things are going. And the way Arteta sort of brought the fans back on side and everything, and the whole club has, that everyone's sort of more, okay, no, we'll give the guy a chance. Let's back him and see how well he does. And if you give players that chance to play and express themselves and everything, and the other thing is, I trust the club now to get the right players because they have been bringing in the right people and everything is going in the right direction.
That's really key,
Yeah, he's just great, and it doesn't seem to matter who plays in midfield with him, who's playing ahead of him. It could be Eddie, it could be Gabriel, Smith Rowe can be playing on one of the wings. He can just play with anyone. When a player can do that, you know how good they are. It doesn't really matter who you put them in a team with; they're just always going to perform.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And we will touch on a few bits and bobs around sort of transfers and stuff like that is second. Just before I go to Alice, one thing I didn't mention was the chat box. So good evening to everyone that is watching live now, or indeed, of course, is listening to us in delay or watching us in delay. These shows go up on YouTube. I think we still got SoundCloud, haven't we, and Spotify and all the usual podcast providers. So if you do look us up on YouTube, give us a thumbs up. And subscribe, hit the bell, and all that good stuff. Also, if you do have any questions for us, we can't always answer them all because it depends on time. But we've got about sort of 40 minutes or so left of the pod. So if you do have any questions, if you just stick a Q and then the question in the chat box, we will do our best to star those and come back to them at the end of the pod. But Alice, I wanted to ask you about the kind of an overall summation of the defensive side of Arsenal, really, rather than picking on individual players. Well, I will slightly pick on one, I suppose, because Kieran Tierney's come back into the side since Zinchenko's been injured. Something I noticed in particular being there was this new dimension of left back goes into left midfield and right back goes into central midfield, and there's a lot of fluid works going on in that midfield area that's coming from the defence, if you get what I mean. Do you feel like the defensive setup we've got at the moment is going to be what we persist with, or do you think that like natural cause will happen in that, you know, one of Ben White or Gabriel will either be sort of lost of form out of the squad or move back into positions? Or would you quite like to see us stick with it? Because there's been quite a few people that have said Ben White's been playing very well. He was very good against Fulham. Seems like a very adequate right back. Saliba settled in absolutely brilliantly. I think Gabriel's playing the best football he has done since he signed for us. And Tierney, although I don't think he's quite fully fit yet, and I think he was thrown in a little bit in regards to the Fulham game. I don't think he was fully ready. but we know what we're going to get from him and Zinchenko. So, and we should throw Aaron Ramsdale into that mix as well. What's your take on the defensive side? Because we do look a little bit more structured this year, don't we? We seem to have options.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think if there's anyone that's going to miss out when we've got a fully fit defence, I think it's probably Tierney. I think for me, and I don't want to start to be too negative on him. Again, like you've highlighted, it might be because he's not fully fit, but the differences between him and Zinchenko are clear to see. Like there's daylight there, isn't it? With the way, I think as a defender, he's a very capable defender, but in terms of the way Zinchenko has played in those first two matches for Arsenal, the way we know he can play when we watch him at Man City, in his attacking involvement, his positioning, his retention of the ball, his passing, is just a lot better than Tierney's. But I think the most frustrating thing for me last night in the Villa game was there was a couple of times, and both times it was the typical Tierney ball where he just tries to cross it and whips it in. Everyone else is forward. He doesn't beat the defender. It comes back. Tierney's then got to sprint back in defence, whereas the rest of the midfield have sort of pushed up as well. And to me, that's just something you wouldn't see Zinchenko play. If that was Zinchenko, he'd probably just cut back and then pass it into Xhaka or Martinelli, or retain possession a bit, or try a better ball instead of just the old cross and hope, which Tierney, I think, is quite culpable of doing on many occasions. I think when he first joined us, it worked out well because people didn't really know how to play against him because he was this new entity. Now people know what Kieran Tierney's made up. And I think, don't get me wrong, he's a very capable left back and a very good left back. I just don't think he really suits that way of playing as much as Zinchenko does. Whether he can adapt his game to become that, I don't know. If I was going to place a bet on it, I'd say probably not. But he does offer us a difference. So I'd probably go back and say that Zinchenko is probably not as good a defender as Tierney can be. So I think there's going to be games when we might need Tierney at left back because we're not going to be as adventurous. We just want to hold back. But I don't know. We'll see how it goes. As for Ben White, I think that he hasn't really put a foot wrong in every game he's played for us this season. I think the last couple of games he's been really good. I think maybe not in the formation or in the way we want to play with these right backs tucking in. I've not really seen anything where he's put a foot wrong. I think if you're a defender and a okay to average defender, you're measured on the mistakes you make. And if you're constantly making mistakes, you're out of positions, you're getting caught out, you're not a good defender. Whereas I think he doesn't really get caught out. And I think he's actually growing into that role. I think the fact that when he was at loan at Leeds, when he played in centre mid for them, I think that has given him ability on the ball, which I think is to me, surprised me a bit. The way he's sort of beating players, the way he's put balls in, the way he's crossed. Obviously, it can be improved on. And again, comparing him to Zinchenko was pointless because Zinchenko was better at that. But I think he's done really well. And I think even when Tomiyasu's fit, I think at the moment, barring an injury to Ben White, I think Ben White keeps him out of the team. And in terms of the two centre-backs, like you say, Saliba, he's on drop-off at the moment. He is cemented his place there in that centre-back partnership. And I think with Gabriel, that we've got two defenders that, again, I think Gabriel is aggressive and he's going to make mistakes. Saliba is young. He's going to mistakes. They're both going to make mistakes. But I think they've got that, well, the whole team, not just the defenders, have got that mentality where they won't let that get to them. They won't let their heads drop. And you know Saliba a lot more than me. You'll know what his mentality is like. From what I've seen from him in the 5 games that I have seen of him, he just seems so calm and collective. He's got the head of a man who's 28 years old. Not is he 21 or what? 20? I don't know.
Yeah, 21. 21, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. So like that. And as for Aaron Ramsdale, I think Carl mentioned, I think towards the end of the season on many pods, that he was a bit sort of concerned about Ramsdale's form. I think we'd all be lying if we said we weren't at the end of last season. He had dropped a few hangers. Obviously, he's beaten by his near post by Maddison at Leicester, but it's just one of those things. I think in these games that have been a bit tighter than they should have been, he's actually made some really good world-class saves that have kept us in the game. And as of defenders, yeah, exactly. And like we've highlighted, he hasn't really had much to do in most of the first halves. We've been dominated in both the Villa game and the Fulham game. We dominated the first halves, and you could probably forgive him for not being really on it because he's not had to do much. But when he has been called into action, he's been fairly good this season. And I just think that, barring any injuries, for me, Zinchenko, Gabriel, Saliba, White, and Ramsdale, back four and goalkeeper that we're probably going to keep the whole season as long as they all stay fit and healthy.
Yeah, seems pretty fluid, doesn't it? And on the Ramsdale thing, I think he's just a very sort of good example of the modern goalkeeper. Short sleeves, likes a bit of time wasting, loves a bit of crowd interaction. But all jokes aside, he's just one of those goalkeepers. He likes to be involved. You know, he likes to come for crosses. I think Martinez is not dissimilar in that. Pickford as well. You know, for all their faults, and they will make the odd ricket. Most of them, they come for crosses, don't they? They make big saves. Nick Pope's another one. Donnarumma is another one at PSG who, for me, I don't really get the hype, but that's just me. But the modern goalkeepers are a lot more visible in terms of, you know, the days of the steady Eddie, David Seaman, I think, are behind us. And you now need a goalkeeper who can use both feet, who can get involved in the build-up play, who can get involved in big save making and cross-taking. And when you are that involved, you are going to make a few rickets. And I did think last night's was a foul, I have to be honest, but I also thought it was pretty poor keeping as well. And I think, again, Ramsdale's a pretty honest lad. I think if you asked him again, I think he probably would have had some sort of something in his ear last night about saying Douglas Luiz possibly will try and score from a corner, be aware of it. And the fact that he did get caught by that is a slight concern. But then at the same time, like I say, when you have got somebody basically pinning you back with their arms behind their back, it doesn't exactly help. So, not an ideal situation to be in. Let me just ask John this question. I did touch on him briefly, but I want to get your thoughts on Eddie Nketiah. Just wanted to know really whether you feel what do you think his role is going to be? A lot of people think that he's going to be that guy who's going to be spearheading the Europa League campaign, and I think that's probably fair, and the cup games as well. But it just feels to me like Arteta's almost desperate to play him because he has made significant impacts in both these last two games that he's come on. And he's clearly signed that contract knowing Gabriel Jesus is coming in. So he clearly backs himself. Would you be tempted to go with a two-pronged striker formation in certain games? Or would you be sort of tempted to keep him as it is and just sort of building around the idea that he will always come on with 20, 25 minutes to go?
No, I mean, I agree. I think that he'll likely lead the line in the Europa League group games at the start, and probably I would assume I was going to say Carling Cup. I don't know who the fucking sponsor is anymore. Is it Skill Carabao? The League Cup and that sort of thing.
The Moose Cup.
Yeah, he obviously the times he's coming on in games now is a lot longer in terms of minutes. I think every time he's come on, he's had a real impact on the game. He's been very unlucky not to get on the score sheet pretty much in every game he's come on in, to be fair. And I think the other interesting thing really is that I would guess this is just my feeling on it. I wouldn't be against seeing a two-man pronged attack with him and Jesus playing. But I actually think it's more likely that one of the wide players would come out, whether it be Saka or Martinelli, and Jesus would move to a wide position to let Nketiah get the chance to go through the middle. Because I agree with you. I think Arteta is probably annoyed that not annoyed. He's very happy, obviously, how well the team's playing. But any other time, pretty much, that he's been at Arsenal, he'd probably be able to drop someone and put Nketiah in because he looks like he's in great form, in really good belief. He's physical, he's running channels, there was one moment last night where I think he picked the ball up and he sort of beat two men and took it half the length of the pitch, and he probably could have just laid it off to Smith Rowe or Martinelli or something and maybe gone to the corner, but he was like, no, I've worked really hard here, I'm going to have a shot, and he ended up putting it over. Which is fair enough, he's a striker. Maybe not the most sensible thing to do, but every time he's come on, he's looked really, really good. And I think the thing with Jesus coming in, he obviously does believe in himself. And the way Jesus talks about him as well, that first interview he did, he said, Arsenal have two, very good strikers. They have me and they have Eddie Nketiah. I'm not going to play every game. The fact that he can play wide is a big bonus. So I think Eddie's going to get more minutes than people realise. I think it's just the weird thing of the season being sort of, it was at the start, it was game a week. Now we're getting to we're going to have a game every 3-4 days for a while. And I think it's pretty much that because of the squeezing in the cup competitions and Europa League and everything else before the World Cup, that you're probably going to see some more rotation. I think you might see Jesus maybe play wide a little bit more on some occasions, depending on knocks or fitness or form concerns over players, that kind of thing. So he'll definitely get his opportunities, and I'm really glad we kept him because I know people were concerned and they said maybe they wanted a different type of striker. But in terms of outlay for the club and money, it just made perfect sense to keep Nketiah. If the manager and Edu and everyone else at the club, the coaches thought he's good enough to, get goals for us, then again, I'm backing them because they've got basically everything else pretty much spot on. I know there may be some mistakes early on with people like Willian and things like that, but since that point, it's the recruitment and the team selection and like everything just seems to be getting better and better each week. The substitutions, the rotation on players is really, really improved. So, I'm really pleased for him, and I'm sure he'll get more chances. And I hope he stays there. Like they gave him the number 14 shirt for a reason. That wasn't just like a gesture or anything. So he's been brilliant, and as you guys were talking about earlier, the defense has been immense. Like Saliba has been great. Gabriel, I think, has been great. Yes, he made some individual errors, but in the game where he made the biggest one, he made up for it. Ben White has been superb. I wasn't 100% sure he could do the right back position full time, but I think he's been excellent. And to be able to keep someone of Tomiyasu's quality out of the team, I think people probably forget how good Tomiyasu was and how key he was for the start. Like last season when he came in after those first 3 games, we got him and it was like, wow. It was like having Bakary Sagna or someone back at the club because he was just like instant straight in and so consistent and really, really good. That's really impressive. And Tierney, I know, like Ellis said, doesn't do the same thing as Zinchenko. Like he can't do it as well, but he does offer that overlap. And the difference is now that we have that extra mobility in the forward line that if he does whip across in, you do actually have someone in the box in Jesus. You do have Martinelli, you do have Saka coming in the back post. I mean, like last night, Saka should have scored, really. He'll be kicking himself. He didn't put that one away. I know it was on his weaker foot, but he'll be gutted he didn't score that. So I just think the multitude of options we've got is so much better now. And because we're going to have so many more games, and then you've got the weird thing of the World Cup, and then coming back and you've got to jump sort of reset, but it's still the same season. Coming in is very bizarre. No one's experienced it. So you're going to have to rotate players around. And let's be honest, the way Gabriel Jesus is playing, he's surely going to the World Cup. You would assume he's probably going to be starting most games. By the end of that, you would think Brazil are going to go pretty far in the tournament. I mean, they generally do anyway. But they do look like they've got a very good national team at the moment. So they could go like right to the final stages maybe. So he might come back a bit tired. Eddie's not going to be going, let's be honest. So you're going to have someone fresh to come in, and the way he's playing at the moment, I would have no problem. He's clearly he's not Jesus. He's not that level.
Yeah.
But if he was starting for Arsenal, even against Man United, I wouldn't be like, I'm worried we're not going to score goals. I'd still be confident that we're still going to dominate, press from the front, harass the defenders. He will get chances, and I'm still confident he'd put them away.
He's one of the higher end backup strikers, I guess, is the way I put it. Like, Julio Alvarez is probably, the perfect one because he's a youngster and he's going to learn off the likes of Haaland. But when you can't afford that type of player, I feel like Nketiah is exactly the sort of player you want.
Can you actually learn off a Norwegian meat shield robot? I mean,
that is questionable. Yeah, it's questionable. I did chuckle when he got the hat trick at the weekend, and Pep Guardiola was trying to give him a hug, and he looked the most uncomfortable man in the world.
He's not human. He is not.
He's
human.
Not, is he? He's not. You can imagine that when he caresses a fine young woman, he does that sort of robotic, like in between us when Will's just like rocking.
Yeah,
like that's probably how he does it. But let's move on from that horrifying image, and just talk a little bit. We will talk a little bit of transfers at this point, Al, because we kind of need to. I guess it is transfer deadline day. And by the way, Europa League stuff we'll probably touch on Everyone's seen the groups by now. We'll touch on that before we preview our first game in that particular competition. I think that seems like a good time to do that. But I do want to just talk to you about the squad. We know that Thomas Partey has got this thigh injury, this mysterious thigh injury that is, quote, recurring. El Nene's sort of injury went under the radar a bit against Fulham in the 1 minute he was, he played the whole game. And Dom in our group chat was sort of saying, if he's done his hamstring, I'm amazed he got through the game because it's not an injury you can run off. It just isn't. It sounds like that's going to be, quote, long-term as well. Some people saying it could be as long away as Christmas, which is nuts. That leaves a big midfield gap for us. At time of recording, Tielemans is playing for Leicester as we speak. And then this morning, we got the news that the man who scored against us from the corner, Douglas Luiz of Aston Villa, seems to be the target. What's your kind of thoughts on that? And as we sit here at 8:25 on transfer deadline day with 2.5 hours to go, do you feel like we'll get that deal done? The current bid is around about 25 plus add-ons. Villa have signed Dendoncker, which you would imagine is a straight replacement. He's seems like a good fit to me. You don't join Man City for anything. I know he didn't make it there, but he only moved on because he wanted to play. He clearly wants the move. Is it a signing that either excites or interests you?
I was just having the discussion actually in the chat box with formerly Nozza. For me, if I'm being honest, it's a bit underwhelming. But as I was saying to Nozza, I think it's needs must really. I think our last season was derailed with the injuries to Tierney and to Partey, and obviously with Zinchenko, we've not only got a competition for Tierney, we've probably got someone who, when we want to play a certain way of football, is someone we'd prefer over Tierney. So we've sort of solved that issue. And I think there was a stat going around either on Twitter or on one of the many WhatsApp groups that I'm in with Arsenal fans about Partey only actually playing 57% of the games for us. So that's a big issue. And I think those two players were people that we had to provide cover for, because we know that we're not going to get 38 league games out of them a season, or how many games in total, including all the cup competitions. So for me, if you'd asked me at the start of the transfer window, what positions do we need to improve? And I think centre mid would probably be quite high up on there, and the left back as well. And obviously, like I said, we've done the left back, done a great job there. With centre mid, I don't know much about Douglas Luiz. I mean, you guys can help me confess here that I thought he was a winger. I didn't realise he was a CDM. Just purely because I see him score 2 goals from a corner in the cup competition last weekend against us, and I just always assume that a corner taker is normally a winger or a fullback or someone in the forward line, not your CDM. But I guess he's got that in his locker, which is good. But yeah, for me, it's needs must. I think our hand has been forced. I'm a bit confused why we never really pulled the trigger on Tielemans. I guess we either don't rate him because he is one of those names that has been consistently bandied around by ITKs and other sources in the media. And we never really went for it. Again, similar situation, not long on his contract. We know Leicester's financial difficulty, so I'm surprised we never really went for him, unless, like I said, they just don't feel he's a good fit for Arsenal. And if that's the case, that's fair enough. I trust the direction this club's going in, and I think they've done quite well, like John has mentioned earlier, with incomings. As for Douglas Luiz, like I said, for me, a little bit underwhelming, but with what you've mentioned about Partey and El Neni, potentially that is the deal that the club saw they could get over the line, and obviously feel that he's a player that will fit them well. Chris, have you seen much of him? What do you think in terms of fit for this club? Do you think he is a good fit?
I actually think he is. I think he is. And what I like about him is a little nod here to Sambi Lokonga, who, by the way, quietly came in and did a really good job last night. Again, looks to me, Sambi, like a player who's been working quite hard on his technique over the summer. He looked a lot more comfortable in possession last night, a little bit less headless chicken. And I think playing alongside Xhaka would actually help Sambi quite a lot, because I think that's the calming influence of Granit Xhaka. Just realised what I just said there. But you know what I mean, in terms of his play style. I think Douglas Luiz, what it tells me is that the club, all the way along, that the supporters, us included, maybe, me less so, just, I don't know, I just haven't always believed in this sort of DM. But I think what it tells you is that the club have always seen a more creative central midfielder than an out-and-out defensive midfielder, if you will. And I wonder if part of this whole something I noticed against Fulham, our centre backs sit very high when we're in possession. Both Saliba and Gabriel both step to at least the halfway line and often join into the midfield. And I wonder if that's sort of this whole left back going to left midfield and Xhaka playing this new advanced role. I wonder if they are literally looking to do this, press the life out of teams, and therefore not looking for an out-and-out holding midfielder. Because Xhaka's clearly playing a lot higher. Odegaard is already up there. I don't think you have an out-and-out defensive midfielder in this team at the moment. And I feel like the reason they're going for or had a look at Tielemans and now seemingly are looking at Douglas Luiz is they want athletes in there. They want players who can get around the pitch, but who have the technical ability to play out from situations. And that's what baffled me. I wrote a tweet and I deleted it because I didn't want to sort of like rant, but I got so sick and tired of people saying, oh yeah, Tielemans is a great fit. He's the perfect number 6. He's the defensive holding midfielder we need. And I was thinking, did you even watch him at Monaco before he signed for Leicester? And even at Leicester, he's not a defensive midfielder. He's not a player who will break up the play. Yes, he can tackle. Yes, he can put himself about and he's an athlete, but he's not a defensive type of player. He's a creator and he's a deep lying creator. And I think that's what Douglas Luiz will do as well. I can't think back. I don't know if you can either, John. I can't think back to the role he played at City because he didn't really play for City very often. But I seem to remember him being in the midfield with Fernandinho at some point for the cup games, I think, the FA Cup games or Carabao Cup games.
I can't actually remember if he really played for City because he was.
It's very rare if he did. I vaguely remember. I could be wrong.
I think he played pre-season for them. I don't know if he actually ended up playing like actual competition games.
Yeah.
To Girona, I think in La Liga.
Right. Yeah, it was definitely
before Villa signed him.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was. I know City got him from Vasco da Gama in Brazil. I agree with you that the Tielemans thing to me only made sense if Xhaka was leaving, because I was like, well, he's not a 6. He doesn't do what Thomas Partey does. He's more box to box. He can spray the ball about, lovely passing, much like Xhaka, and he's got the engine to get up and down the pitch. Douglas Luiz, people probably aren't excited by him because he's been at Villa, but you have to look at the price. If you can get him for 25 million plus add-ons, I think City might have had a sell-on clause, which is probably why Villa are trying to push the price up a bit, which is fair enough. I understand that.
5 million, I think, somewhere I read,
but he's got over 100 Premier League games. He's been in the league 3 seasons. He knows the league. Arteta probably worked with him, albeit briefly, at some point at City, so you probably have some idea of the player. I'm sure Edu knows him very well.
Oh, Edu's barbecued for him, I'm sure.
Yeah, because he's played for the national team on many occasions. I think he won the Olympic gold with them, maybe in... I'm going to have to look this up. Douglas Luiz.
I think he did play.
Yes. He did. He won in 2020 in Tokyo, yeah. And he was runner-up at the Copa America last year as well with Brazil. So he's he was... he didn't always start games, but he was always coming on quite often in games to either shore things up or just keep the ball and ticking it over. He's not an exciting name, and I get that. But you're paying... Realistically, if you're getting a midfielder for 25 million who has 100 Premier League games, that's really solid. Like you can't argue with that. Whether we get him or not is another matter. But he's 24 years of age. He fits the age profile. Yeah, he obviously knows Martinelli. He knows all the Gabriels. He even has a Gabriel in his name, so he would actually be our 4th Gabriel. I think his name is Douglas something Gabriel Luiz, like his full ridiculous name. So I'm not against the signing. I think it's a very sensible one. You've got to look at it. I feel bad for El Neni because by the sounds of it, he's probably going to be out most of the season, and this realistically was probably his last year at Arsenal. I can't see him staying another season, and I like El Neni, and I think he's a really good squad player who will come in and just do whatever the manager asks for him. and he's very likable and everything else. So that's a sad part of it. But these things happen sometimes. So I'd quite happily take him. I don't think he'd come in as a starter by any means. I think at the moment Lokonga probably would be ahead of him. But being able to have someone who can come in and go, right, you know the league, we haven't got to worry about you there. Learn the system and way we play. You know the Brazilian guys, so you're going to settle in easy. London is, no offense to Birmingham, a nicer place to live than Birmingham is.
Facts.
You know, it's more culturally inviting, shall we say, than certain other places in the country. Birmingham is lovely, by the way. I've been there many times, but it's not as nice as London. If you're a footballer anyway, if you're a poor person like me, London's horrible. If you live in the nice bits. But yeah, it ticks all the boxes for me. So it's a shame that we didn't manage to do the, centre mid plus a winger, which I think was probably... I think if the Partey and the El Neni thing hadn't have happened, then today you might have seen a last-minute dash for maybe a forward. I think they probably feel, you know what, we'll be okay. And likely it wouldn't surprise me if there's a lot more action in January than you normally see in a January window, just because of the weird season. It's going to be post-World Cup. Lots of players always move after the World Cup. So, yeah, I'd quite happily take him. I would not be against it at all. And according to Arsenal Twitter anyway, I don't know if you've seen this. Well... Someone went past his house who used to live next to him for a year, and there was a black Mercedes there with him getting inside and possibly a suitcase. Right. Then about half an hour later, there was a
hang on. Suitcase with wheels or without? Because that's key information.
I couldn't tell from the picture, but if I read the comments, someone will probably tell me the brand of the suitcase and everything dimensions.
We need that information.
Yeah. There was also a picture of the motorway, and he was on the motorway going in the direction of Birmingham to London.
Oh,
apparently of this Mercedes van, and then someone else has posted and said those are the Mercedes vans that Arsenal use to collect people to deliver them for interviews or medicals.
I love transfer deadline day.
I hate to burst the bubble here a little bit, but if you are, how many times has I think the All or Nothing documentaries have shown this before, and if you haven't read it, Neil Warnock tells a brilliant story in his autobiography about signing players on deadline days when he was at QPR and some of the weird and wonderful places he'd meet players under the cover of darkness, or back streets, or regardless of whether we agree to deal with Villa or not. We would have got him probably on the road by now, wouldn't we? I mean, you only have to look at the crazy story that's gone on today with Bamba Dieng, who was
God, yeah. Wasn't he basically about to sign, and then Marseille have come in and
Nice have signed him? Yeah.
Nice got him, that was it, yeah.
He was going to Leeds. It was all done, and then Nice rang up and went, "All right, lads, we wouldn't mind him." And he sat at the airport and did the deal in the airport. So I mean, it's a fluid situation. I would be very surprised if he is indeed the player that we are looking at. Which there's obviously smoke, so there is some fire there. If he is the player we're going after, it will be madness for us not to have got him to Colney by now, to have got a medical or at least something in place. And I'm sure personal terms would have been agreed. Christ, personal terms would have been agreed last night. He was at our ground, for God's sake. Yeah. You're not telling me that somebody wouldn't have had a word with him, or that
and he's a guy from all accounts that they were looking at last summer, I think, as well.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, because I remember Neil of our parish was quite excited by the idea of him coming in. So, and he does remind me a bit of Guendouzi without the baggage, which is the other thing I was going to say. In his play style, he's a bit of a rat. He's a player who he doesn't mind mixing it a bit. He's a sort of player that if somebody's running through our midfield, he'll quite happily hack their heels out from under him and stop a counter attack. He's got a bit of that about him, and I don't dislike that, as long as Xhaka's not doing the same thing at the same time. So, we shall see. As I say, at the time of recording, we still got a few hours to go, and I think he'd be a welcome addition if we do get him in. Are you shedding any tears?
Because we spent 10 minutes talking about him, it's probably not going to happen now.
No, exactly. Yeah, we've completely wasted our time.
More than likely now, we're probably going to end up signing the winger that I just said we weren't going to sign, rather than the centre mid that's been reported all over Twitter.
Cody Gakpo is currently arriving at Colney on a Segway across the channel. Do you shed any tears, Alice, about Hector Bellerin, who's, bless him, fair play, he's landed on his feet. contract termination today. He's going to go to Barcelona for a year. Nice work if you can get it. Ainsley Maitland-Niles is off to Southampton. The Rob Holding protocol will be staying in place. It looks like he's staying, which is always a good thing. It's good to see that has been back for the last 2 games. And I think the only other one that maybe we thought might go would be Reiss Nelson, but it seems like he's going to stick around for now. I think Reiss Nelson will probably end up making the team next season. I don't think he's ever going to leave Arsenal, bless him. And to be fair to him, he's a very talented footballer. I just can't understand why he hasn't moved for regular games, but fair play.
The next Soares.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. When COVID-4 happens, he'll be in the suit. But yeah, any tears shed over Hector or Ainsley Maitland-Niles? I mean, both nice blokes, and I think we all agree that Hector had it all in front of him until the injury, and Maitland-Niles just maybe didn't quite reach the levels that an Arsenal player needs to hit to be a regular.
It sounds weird, but if anything, I'm sort of happy for Hector Bellerin. All the best to him, man. Like,
Same.
Like you say, that injury sort of derailed his career. He's not even third choice right back for us, probably. He had to go, and the fact that it's mental, really. If you'd said to me 5-6 years ago that Hector Bellerin was going to go to Barcelona, and the circumstances were he couldn't even get in the Arsenal team, but Barcelona was still going to buy him. It's maddening, really, but all fair play to him. That's obviously where he's come from. That's probably where, if he could plan out his career, he probably would have wanted to go back there at some point. Obviously, they've got Champions League football, so he gets to play a bit of Champions League football as well. Whether he will or not, I don't know. Is another thing. He might get some minutes in that competition. I can't really speak too badly of him.
He can keep his sick mullet as well, which is always a bonus, because that is a good mullet, to be fair. So,
well, he likes his fashion, doesn't he? He's a trendsetter, or attempted trendsetter. But yeah, fair play to him. Good luck to him. He'll probably be shipped off by Barcelona when they want to try and balance the books in a year's time and get someone else in.
Yeah, he'll be gone in 6 weeks when they can't register him.
As for Ainsley Maitland-Niles, I think he's his own downfall. The constant insisting that he wants to play in centre midfield when he's not good enough to play in central midfield. I think really, from an Arsenal perspective, not letting him go to Wolves. I know he had a good run of form when Wolves come in for him, but I think that's a missed opportunity. And now he forms one of the sort of the deadwoods that we're trying to shift, and has ended up just going on a loan just so he gets his wages off. So I think he needed to go. Am I upset? No. Am I angry? No. I'm just happy that that's more wages off the books than we can actually buy players that are going to be, or employ players that will be more useful to us in the future with him gone. And like John said, that potentially we might have a bit more of a busier January transfer window, and if getting Hector out and getting Ainsley Maitland-Niles out and getting the other guys out helps that, then I'm all for it.
Yeah, agreed. And one word answer, yes or no. Either of you have any concerns or are bothered about Aubameyang pitching up in blue?
No.
Couldn't give a fucking monkeys. Honestly.
Yeah.
I think it's because I'm old and I don't. It takes a lot more for me to get to attach to a player now.
It would have been a massive deal, wouldn't it, signing for the rivals? Now it's like it's just not a big thing, is it? It's just not a.
The way he left Arsenal and the way we sort of shipped him out, I went off him quite dramatically. So I think that plays a big hand in it for me. He'll probably do all right for him, score a few goals. He'll go off the ball and then he'll go to shit like he did for us and
for everybody else who goes to Chelsea.
Like he did.
It's actually quite refreshing that Chelsea are signing our leftovers for a change.
Yeah,
you noticed that? Yeah. It's quite nice, isn't it?
How about William back in London for Fulham?
Rocking up at Fulham, isn't he?
He
doesn't get to work under Scott Cardigan. That must be quite.
That is a shame. No, that is a shame.
But apparently, we've got a sell-on clause for Bellerin, though.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think. You have
20,
to make something.
25% or something sell-on clause. So
yeah. Which does make a little bit of sense. And I agree with you. I think, nobody's condoning Aubameyang's had to deal with some pretty horrendous shit the last 24, 48 hours himself. So, nobody wishes that on a guy. But one thing I would say, and this is not sort of a rant about how he lives his life, the cars and the jewelry and the tattoos when he should have been in COVID isolation and all those things. But the thing that came out of that, of the all or nothing clearly was, Arteta wanted it to work really bad. He really wanted him to be the centerpiece, and he gave him every opportunity. And I know there's this joke about the dossier that Arteta kept, but sometimes you using a Sunday League analogy, you bend over backwards for your best players because you really want them, because you know how good they are, and you know that player, yes, he might turn up pissed as a fart on Sunday morning, but he'll score you the goal that beats your rivals, or he might rock up 20 minutes late for kickoff, but he will come on and win you a game. Obviously, at the professional level, it's a bit different to that, but he was clearly very liked by the other players. He was clearly a very big personality in the dressing room, and I just think that he'll fit in quite nicely with the Chelsea culture, in my humble opinion. And I wish him well without him doing too well. Do you know what I mean? We know he'll score against us. I don't think he'll go full Adebayor. I hope he doesn't. And I wish him well, but at the same time, I sort of hope it's just 6 to 12 months and he disappears off the face of the earth situation.
He can bang a hat trick against Spurs. That's fine.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's the fly in the ointment, isn't it? If he, like Alexis Sanchez, signed for Marseille in Spurs' group, you love to see it. An ex-Arsenal player against Spurs, happy days. And we all know Chelsea don't particularly like Spurs very much as it is. It's a shame, actually, isn't it, that they've already played each other once this season, but hey-ho. Right, anywho, before we wrap up tonight's show then, we've got about 5 minutes or so for questions. So if anybody does have any questions, now is the time to go for it. I think we have got one, have we not, John, in the box?
We do have one. I have a question. Have you seen Zinchenko's wife? Good Lord.
No,
she
but
just
now
popped up on my Twitter feed.
Naturally, I'm going to have to look that up at some point.
Jesus. Wow. No wonder he's smiling all the time.
Is she Bakary Sagna's wife level? So that's the key thing, because she was elite.
She's very elite. Wow.
Excellent.
I like the fact she's rocking a red skirt with the top as well. It's very keeping it color coded. Love it.
Very on point. Should say, but by the way, the club have painted the crest. Did you notice this last night?
Refreshed it all.
They waited till I'd been up. They didn't want to do it for me, the bastards. But that's fine, whatever. But yeah, they have refreshed the color scheme, and apparently the wraps are coming next. Wi-Fi still shit though, can confirm.
I don't think I've ever been to a stadium where Wi-Fi works properly.
No, it's fucking dreadful, isn't it? And although, by the way, personal rant, National Express Wi-Fi just as bad. It doesn't actually exist. It says it's connected, but it doesn't exist. It's a myth. Yeah. Anyway, what was the question that we had come in?
It was a question. I don't know. It's from Craig Barlow. What do you guys think of Marquinhos? And I guess the sort of to follow on from that, he's been on the bench. Was it just one game or 2 games now?
He's on the bench twice now. I think he's on the bench
twice now.
Fulham and now Villa.
So, do you reckon we'll get to see him in maybe the Europa League?
I do, yeah. I get the impression we will, El. Do you think? Because if you imagine they're going to rest Martinelli, and you'd imagine Smith Rowe will take the Odegaard role in Europe. You would imagine then you've then got to fill 2 wide positions, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Marquinhos take one of those wide positions, and then I'm trying to think who else would come in. Who else would come in on the other side? I'm trying to think now.
I'm not sure. I mean, that was the part of the reason why one of the things about possibly getting another forward in was another rotation. But you've got Fabio Vieira, who we haven't seen yet as well.
Yeah, who can play right side. Yeah, so maybe
can play right side, can play 10, can play 8 as well, can't he? So we do have a few options there. So yeah.
He's a unit, isn't he? Looking at him.
That's the thing that amazed me, because when we signed him, I thought, he'll go on loan to Spain or somewhere, or Portugal maybe, and then he'll come back. But he looks absolutely huge.
He looks like a middleweight boxer, doesn't he? Yeah. And he's got those Roberto Carlos legs, doesn't he? He just look like
he doesn't look like he should be a winger.
No, he doesn't.
He looks like a bruiser centre mid or something.
Do you know who he reminds me of? Actually, he reminds me a bit of the Beast. What was his name? Baptista.
Baptista. Yeah.
Reminds a bit of his build. He's got that sort of that heavy set. What would you do, Al? Would you give him legs in the Europa League? Because realistically, that's going to be the competition, isn't it? To give him a shot.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think if you've kept him at the club, you're going to have to play him. I think there's a reason they've kept him at the club. And like you just sort of highlighted there in that little conversation, we're not exactly brimming at the piece with lots of wingers, really. We just had to try and think who we could sort of rotate. Like, obviously, Fabio Vieira, you mentioned, can play there. And then obviously Marquinhos. After that, maybe when Nelson is fit, he'll get some minutes in that competition.
Yeah, you think, yeah.
But yeah, we're a little bit short, I think, in all honesty. And I think that's why there has been rumours of us signing another forward or a wide forward. But yeah, I think he's got to. Otherwise, who else are you playing that position other than Saka and Martinelli and running them into the ground with the fixture list that we've got going up? So I think, yeah, he'll definitely get minutes, 100%.
Unless, of course, they opt for a 3-back in Europe and bring Tierney or Zinchenko into the wide roles, because you imagine Cedric will play right back in those particular games, and maybe they've got an idea of playing the 3-back in Europe, perhaps, because also Rob Holding, you'd imagine, will get games in that competition. Tomiyasu will get games to build his fitness there. So, yeah, you could see a situation where maybe Zinchenko comes into the wide midfield, because he can play central midfield, but he can also play wide right or left, can't he? He started as a 10, so I wonder if maybe they've got the idea of him, because you can't just play kids in that Europa. You know, it's a serious competition, and as Roma will tell you, Bodo Glimt are no joke in terms of you can't just rock up and beat teams like that. You've got to have a bit of experience, which is why it's a bit of a shame that we have lost El Nene, because again, he would have been the guy you'd have brought in because. For all his faults, you know, we're relying on Granit Xhaka being made of granite now, aren't we? If he goes down with an injury as well, we really are in the shit. So, yeah, I do feel like we need to push on for this Luis signing or whomever else we might be able to get in 2.5 hours or whatever it is. Yeah, it's a bit of a tough one.
Zakaria has just signed for Chelsea as well.
Yeah, good deal that for me. I like him. I like him as a player. Came out of nowhere, that one as well, didn't it?
Yeah. And Miguel Aziz has gone. I think someone put it in the chat actually. Miguel Aziz has gone on loan to Ibiza.
Oh, is he? He'll have a lovely time over there. Lovely time. What
are they second division now? I think.
That's that. Yeah, La Liga 2. Yeah. You can imagine, can't you? Like Mikel Arteta coming in, and he sat there, like Miguel, we want you to go away and get some first team football. We want to send you to a league that's going to challenge you. You know, it's going to be some midweek games. It's going to be a bit tough. It's going to be, and he sat there thinking, "Oh fucking hell, I'm going to Barnet. I'm going back to Portsmouth. Yeah, we'd like to go to Ibiza. Ibiza, you say? Well, I mean, I wouldn't want to argue with you, boss. You know, I think I can probably make an impact there.
Yeah. What a terrible loan.
What a terrible loan. Yeah. It's there's worse places to go. Worse places to go indeed. In the interest of, in the absence, of other questions, just very briefly before we go, I just want to get your maybe just 2 minutes each from you about where the league stands, because I'm always intrigued about where other clubs are. Any other clubs that have caught your eye? We've seen 2 rounds of fixtures in the last week. Obviously, you know, Liverpool's sort of will play until the referee allows us to score. That's always fun. Manchester United currently winning at Leicester. That's a bit like kicking a blind man's stick away at the moment, isn't it? Haaland is doing his thing. I triple captained him last night. That was a bonus, by the way. But
no way.
Yes, I did. But any clubs caught your eye for good or bad reasons? Villa as well. They look an absolute shambles at the moment. So I don't know. Has anything caught your eye in recent games from opposition or rivals, if you will?
I think.
Go on, sorry, Alice.
Yeah, no, you first. Go
on. No, I was going to say. Villa, how poor they've been. I mean, I didn't know much about Gerrard as a manager, but I thought he seemed to do all right towards the end of last season, and they've got a pretty solid squad. They've got some very good, like Leon Bailey and Ollie Watkins, Douglas Luiz. I know not everyone is a big fan of Tyrone Mings, but I think he's a decent, centre back, and they've got a good keeper in Martinez, even though he's a bit of a twat.
I like Watkins.
How poorly they're doing. Leicester is a big shock as well. Like, I thought they might drop off a bit, but I didn't realise it'd be quite that dramatic. And I guess the other one in terms of disappointment that surprised me a little bit is West Ham.
Second season syndrome for them at the moment.
Yeah, you just always think with a Moyes team that like even if they're not winning, they'll grind out results and get points and stuff. And West Ham have got, they're not a bad team. They've got some good players there and stuff. I guess the sort of I'm impressed with Fulham, how well they've done. I'm constantly impressed by Brighton. Like they never, I don't know. Maybe it's just because it's Josh and it's just annoying because he always talks about them.
We get the inside track.
Yeah, we get all the inside track. But yeah, they just seem to buy brilliantly. They sell really well. Potter seems like a very good manager.
He's
like
the next club. He's the next sort of manager that goes to the next level, isn't he?
Yeah. And I guess I'm more than anything amazed by how many players Nottingham Forest have signed.
Is it 22 now? Sir Jorier is returning, and Jesus,
God,
they have. I mean, fair play if it works. I mean, you know, and I do like the manager there. He does look a bit of an odd character, but he seems to be doing a good job. So I mean, what about teams at the top, Ellis? Are you anybody you're looking at and thinking? I want Spurs to lose every week, of course, but I quite like to see them get tonked at some point quite soon because I'm a little bit concerned about the fact that they're putting an unbeaten run together. I don't really like the idea of that. Aren't they playing Man City quite soon, though? I think.
Maybe a couple of games' time, potentially.
Yeah. But anybody else that you've been impressed with? I mean, Man City look Man City-ish, and Liverpool are, they seem to have fallen off, haven't they, really?
Yeah, Liverpool have got, I think, going back to the negatives, I think Steven Gerrard will probably, if I was going to put a bet on, I think he'd be the next manager to be sacked.
Him or Lampard, maybe? Oh, actually, Brendan Rodgers at the moment is... maybe.
Yeah, I forgot about that. But yeah, I was listening to the Football Weekly and they mentioned that his right-hand man has moved to as a manager.
The guy who, the coach,
that maybe
QPR
he'd done a lot of the work behind the scenes that no one... Yes,
is that his name, Beale? Yeah,
something like that. He'd done a lot of work behind the scenes that they think would probably impact this squad, and by the looks of it, it has. He was with him when he was at Rangers, etc., etc. So I think, if anything, Arsenal have shown that it's good to stick by your manager even when you have had a poor run. But I don't think they'll give Steven Gerrard that time. I don't think Villa will be that patient. I'm slightly worried about Newcastle. I know they've drawn like 4 of their 5 games, but in the teams they played, they've played well. Like they were obviously. City eventually decided to just turn Haaland on and let him do what he does.
put the batteries in.
Come on, Haaland, come on. We conceded a couple of goals. We conceded a goal. Off you go.
Off you go.
It's like they just shout a random Arnie quote and he comes off the bench. Get to the chopper and Haaland.
Let's go.
Maybe he's like one of those robots. He's got like a word that you just say and then it turns him on to goal scoring.
Is that the Hulk?
A trigger word. City are just City, aren't they? There's not much you can really do. I think obviously Newcastle will be a bit pissed off that they lost to Liverpool last night, but they have quietly impressed me. Again, Brighton, like you say, they are just a very well-run team, really, aren't they? Or club, I should say, not team. But yeah, everyone else, Chelsea, have sort of just seem to keep buying players, but can't really put a run together. I don't really know what to quote Gary Neville, what plan is.
They don't seem to know, do they? They seem to have a lot of players who don't want to be there, and Ziyech and Pulisic.
It just seems like they've been bought, and then it's like, I'm gonna chuck a load of money around and see what sticks.
It does seem an odd one. Yeah,
I do agree with Ellis on Newcastle. I think their performances probably warrant a higher position than where they are in the league.
And Bruno Guimaraes,
they probably feel like they're missing one of their best players, and they probably feel like they should be higher up in the league considering the way they've played. So I'll be interested if they can keep a consistent team, like in terms of fitness and stuff and availability, how high they can finish this season.
And they might have got a steal in Alex Isak, because I'm slightly biased in that I've followed him since he sort of first broke through, and I'm a bit of a closet Sweden follower. But he's. I was really excited when we were looking at him because he's a very modern day big man. He's not just the lump it long. In fact, in the air is probably his weakest of his abilities, but he's very technically good, and he is deceptively quite quick because he's got a long stride. And as you saw last night, he can finish. Even the goal that was ruled out for offside, I think, wasn't it? He's a finisher, and if they get him on song, and he stays fit, and they get the supply to him, I think he could be a player who will take them to that sort of. It reminds me a bit of like when Newcastle were good and they had Ferdinand and Shearer, and then they brought Asprilla. It's kind of like he's the Asprilla to that.
Yeah.
I just wonder if he might do all right. But
be interesting to see if they can sort of push to Europa League spots.
Yeah,
and maybe the club go, oh, okay, we're a year or two ahead of our sort of 5-year plan or something. You know, that.
I think they should be though, don't you? Europa League, I think they should be pushing for that.
I think it's so hard to compete for it now, though. You think if you think how much we've improved, I hate saying it, how consistent that lot look at the moment, although it's still early days. You know, and you would expect that City, you know, are obviously going to be top or thereabouts. Liverpool will get back into form.
Yeah,
that pushes one of those teams immediately into a Europa League spot. Then you've got Chelsea, who are better than, you know, their squad's certainly better than the results they're getting. Brighton are very good. Fulham have been really consistent. Southampton are the most bizarre team in the world because they look like they should win most games and then just throw them away. Palace are a lot better team.
Palace is another great shout, to be fair.
Yeah, Palace are a really good side.
Big teams, aren't they?
Yeah.
So there's a lot, I think there's a lot more competition for those sort of Europa League and what's it called now? Conference League. Yeah. The insulting European Cup competition.
there is a lot of clubs that are in that bun fight. I'd say one other player, or just who I watched this week, and I'll be honest, I hadn't seen a lot of him because he played in Scotland. So why would I have? Patterson, the fullback at Everton, he looks a player, doesn't he? And I know we've kind of got our Scottish left back, but he looks really good against Leeds. He looked like a sort of player who, you know, if he's coached the right way and gets given his legs, I loved his, dare I say, his Scottishness. Just looked like a guy who just would not give up any tackle ever, and he'd probably tackle his mum.
I'm very glad we're not sort of in that pack of like Leeds down to sort of Palace. As if we can stay clear of that, because I would not want to get in that fight, because that's like 8 teams scrapping it out for like 2 places.
Yeah,
I don't want to get dragged into that. Just keep our heads above that, and I think we'll be fine for top 4 this season.
And I don't want to like Leeds because I can't stand their fans, but I kind of like Leeds. Do you know what I mean? Like, I like.
No one is supposed to like Leeds other than Leeds fans. Everyone is supposed to like Leeds,
exactly.
I think because they've been away for so long, and you're like, oh, well, they kind of play nice football.
There's just something quite sort of wholesome about Jesse Marsh and the idea that he's so quintessentially American that he'll pick a fight with anyone. It will be anybody else's fault but his. But I quite like the fact that he's almost taken the mick out of himself almost a bit and has embraced it and almost mocked the people that said, well, you're American, you know nothing. And he's given some quite likable interviews. But as you say, ultimately it's Leeds, so we have to not like them. Ainsley Maitland-Niles has gone to Southampton. That's been confirmed. So good luck to him. I presume that's a permanent deal, or is it a loan? I can't remember. What
I think it's a loan, and then there's probably option to buy, but whether that will get reported at some point, won't they? We shall ask. We shall ask the Ross and find out for sure. I'm sure he'll know.
He'll end up in Ibiza. It'll be fine. All of our players will end up over there, or Mallorca, or somewhere. So good stuff. Right, I think we'll call it a day there. Actually, so very quickly, we did have one other question, and it'd be rude of me not to give it a quick nudge, which was from Fred Thurbin, and he just said, "Oh, that's my damn computer." Every time without fail, should clubs be allowed to say undisclosed fee? I'm not that nosy, but I think we should know. Yeah, I do agree with that, Fred. It's not like the days of Arsenal signed Bergkamp for 7.5 million as it was back in the day. I don't think it's the clubs necessarily keeping it quiet. I think it's more that no one truly knows because there's image rights. And I was reading somewhere the other day that even the contracts for when you say image rights, you automatically think about their boot deals, their likeness, their image, etc. Apparently, it even goes as deep as what video games they're in nowadays, or what highlights packages they're put on for apparently players can dictate that if they're used in BT or Sky advertising, they have a cut of that income from advertising. It's mental. So I think if you said, yes, we've signed this player for 18.5 million plus 3.5 million image rights plus 12 million for EA rights plus 12 quid for his Walker's Crisp sponsorship, and it would just go on forever. So I think that's why the clubs say, and also the shithouser in me says, it's a rather clever way of sports washing your money away with nobody has to know where it's gone, like Man City have been doing for years, allegedly. So, yeah, I think that's probably, and as Anne's just put in the chat, agent fees as well is another big thing that nobody really wants to know how much certain agents who will remain nameless take from deals. Hey, Pepe, who scored the other night. Right, before we get into all sorts of liable trouble, we shall leave there. We will be back after the game at the weekend, the Manchester United game. I think we're still doing live shows, aren't we? It's just that I'm never around for them. So I think there will be some sort of show after the Man United game. We will, of course, be back after the game to do a podcast next week. Not sure what day. You're gonna have to bear with us a little bit this season, dear viewer, because with the hectic schedule and us playing, I think we've got something like 13 games in about 4 days or something stupid in October. So it is going to be a little bit all over the shop. We may do a couple of shorter podcasts just to cover games individually, or we might do it a bit like tonight where we combine 2 games into one and just kind of talk about various bits and bobs. But we will be here for you. We'll say that much. We just don't know exactly what days. So when you see the tweet go up that we're live, just turn up about 20 minutes later and we'll probably be still faffing around, and then we'll be live about half an hour after that. So just keep an eye on the Twitter feed. As always, please do like and subscribe on the YouTube channel, as I mentioned before, click the bell, etc. You know where to find us on Twitter by now. We've been doing this long enough. If you've got any individual feedback for any of us, drop us a tweet. Or, of course, if you ever want to ask a question and you happen to have missed the podcast, just tweet us and we will do our best to try and include them for the next show. Right, that's enough waffling from me. Alice, I'm sure you've got, like, I don't know, a hot air balloon to catch or something, haven't you? Or something or other to do.
Don't
That's
mention that, man.
It's the most middle-class thing I've ever seen in our group. Like,
you can't go in a hot air balloon with that hair. Like, no. Honestly, that hair is a fire risk.
I'll take it down a bit.
Jesus. Well, whatever you're doing, Alice, have a good one. Thank you for coming on this evening.
No worries. I don't think my baby's actually asleep yet. I'm surprised you haven't heard her, to be fair.
I thought I heard her once, but it may have just been my ears. But hey ho. Glad the family's well. And you're very welcome. And John, thank you for coming and pressing buttons. And I know Danny had one job and he cocked that up, but you held the fort. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I learned to press the buttons, but I forgot to do the video thing. But yeah. But I'm going to go out and buy a new kettle because apparently if I buy a kettle for £20, it will save me £10 in the first year on my electricity bill because Boris has fixed the energy crisis. So I'm going to go straight out and do that. Thanks, Boris.
God. Well, you go and do that, and I'm going to go and buy 14 tons of fireworks to let them off when we beat Man United 7-0 on Sunday. So yes, if you're watching, Richard, God bless you, sad little man. Anyway, we'll keep pissing people off. Open veins inject happiness. We shall keep riding the crest of a wave. And yeah, no matter what happens at Old Trafford, we will go there with a sense of belief. We kind of owe them one. We are due. So let's hope we turn up on Sunday and we can all be celebrating once more. But whatever the result, win, lose or draw, we will be back next week. Thank you to my 2 guests this evening. Thank you to all of you, fabulous people in the chat, for joining us. We really appreciate you. Without you, this would be pointless. So thank you. And of course, thanks to Danny for setting everything up. We have been a Bergkamp Wonderland. We are indeed an Arsenal podcast. We will remain so. And here's to 6 in a row. Take care, everybody. We'll speak to you very soon. Up the Arsenal.